So let's jump into yet another Transformer Slag podcast Patreon listener question. Once again, if you are interested in being part of the Transformer Slag Patreon, come join us and have a good time and help support the podcast. Check the description below, patreon.com/protoman. What does the Patreon get you? It gets your name and the end scroll at the end of every segment moving forward from your first patronage. You get access to the Transformer Slag podcast Discord, which is Patreon only. What's great about that Discord is we have a lot of cool stuff on there. I constantly, almost every couple of days, post all the deals that are going on around in the Transformer world, so you could save money collecting in your hobby. We also post rare content, Transformers lore, and it's just a cool place to talk about Transformer product. Depending on how high you are in the Patreon tiers, you also get a little gift in the old snail mail, something in the mail I'll send you. And of course, most importantly, the Patreon listener question. We got one today from our longtime patron, the Gray Skull. And the Gray Skull, it seems to be converted recently after my years of talking about Beast Wars. And let's jump into that. Due to picking up some recent Transformers War for Cybertron Kingdom figures in Optimus Primal and Megatron, I'm starting to warm up more to the concept of design of Beast Wars characters and want to start collecting some vintage Beast Wars toys. What are some good figures to start with? It's a very large line, and some of them seem to be very daunting to me. Can you steer me to where the good stuff is? What are some that are also probably some that I should avoid, because some of the designs, in my personal opinion, are kind of ugly? Thank you for all the great content you put out. It made 2020 a little less terrible. The Gray Skull. Well, thank you, Gray Skull. Yes, 2020 was a little crazy, but hopefully the streams and everything I was doing just makes it a little more fun for all of us to get together and talk Transformers. And of course, the Patreon Discord also is a great place to hang out too. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week to talk robots. But that being said, so Kingdom, it's funny, like, I posted this too on my Twitter, how, like, Kingdom in a lot of ways, it's bringing back some of the non-Transformer fans that grew up on Beast Wars and discovering this product for the first time, and then bringing them into the plastic crack world, as I like to call it. Or, alternatively, it's just making people who are primarily G1 fans, and now they're going, hey, well, this is, these characters now part of my normal buying habits. Maybe I'll pick up this Optimus Primal and see if he's any good. And they end up enjoying him and then diving into Beast Wars and looking at some of the other stuff. So as of this recording, January 20th, 2021, right now we're still kind of knee-deep in Wave 1 of Kingdom. Just to give people context who are coming to this listener question a little late. So right now that leads to pretty much Grayskull probably only having at his disposal, the Core Class Rat Trap, Deluxe Cheetor, and Black Arachnia, the Voyager Optimus Primal, which he says he got here, and the Leader Class Beast Wars Megatron, which he said he got here. The next wave, which will probably be hitting, I want to say in 2 months from now, which is only going to have, and this is crazy when you think about it, in terms of Beast Wars characters that we're familiar with, Wave 2 is only going to have Deluxe Air Razor and Voyager Dinobot, as opposed to like the 5 G1 people that are going to be available in that same wave, not even counting the G1 RC repack that's going to be part of it too. So don't let anyone ever tell you, Kingdom is Beast Wars only, and I'm not going to be collecting Kingdom because it's a Beast Wars line. There's a lot of G1 for the G1 collectors still in Kingdom. In fact, it's still pretty overwhelming at the end of the day, so don't think otherwise. And there's some great G1 stuff too, like Huffer and Inferno coming. Anyways, point being is that's kind of just to give context of what is available right now in terms of the Kingdom stuff that he was picking up. But when we're talking about going backwards to the vintage Beast Wars era, and it's funny to use vintage because it is, as crazy as this sounds, it is a 25-year-old brand. What a world. And there's a lot of really good stuff there. I'll start with stuff to kind of avoid if you're someone that's going into Beast Wars Vintage for the first time. If you're not doing it from a speculator collectible kind of angle, I would avoid any of the GPS kind of figures. And what I mean by that is the gold plastic syndrome figures. So while Beast Wars Grimlock, the deluxe class, which is a white repaint of Beast Wars Dinobot, the deluxe, with some, I guess I'll use the term Dalmatian coloring on him. Great looking figure, but due to the test of time, is fragile as hell. And not a enjoyable experience if you're just buying to enjoy the figure, pose, collect, and put on your shelf. If you're a speculator, someone that's collecting to buy, resell, that's a different story. But if you're someone who is buying to enjoy the figure, to enjoy the product, avoid at all cost, very fragile. A big part of that Grimlock or that Dinobot in that matter, a big part of their transformation is the legs going from the front of the Dino mode into transforming into the legs of the robot mode. The ball joints are on gold plastic. It's the hips, and they will snap no problem in doing that transformation. You could do it with kid gloves and be very, very careful, but depending on how bad the GPS is already set in, it's not going to look good. It's not going to look good. I would avoid that. Another one is, as much as I love Magnaboss, when you do the combined mode for Magnaboss, it's the same thing. Silverbolt, which makes kind of like the chest, I guess you could call some of the chest with Ironhide. The clips that are going to clip in, there's like a brown plastic, gold plastic thing going on there. They are going to snap. Proceed with caution, unfortunately, with that one. And probably the worst one of them all that hurts the most is, because it's probably one of my favorite characters in the entire show, Beast Wars Transmetal's Megatron. Oh man, what a mess. Brown plastic, gold plastic syndrome all over it. The hips, the shoulders, the fact that they have this thin plastic that's on a pin that's on, again, if it would have been any other plastic color would have been totally fine, but because it's the GPS kind of plastic, it snaps like nothing. Very fragile figure, but such a gorgeous figure that back in the day, I loved that figure to death. Today, you just can't enjoy it, to the point that like every other repaint of that version of that character holds up better. Even the Armada repaint, they did an Armada repaint called Predacon. Literally, that's what it was called. And that one holds up to this day. You could get the Japanese version, the Beast Wars Metals version of Beast Wars Megatron Transmetal, but the colors are not show accurate, but at least you have something that won't crumble in your hands. Anyways, there's a whole bunch of others. Like there's Randy, the infamous one that I did even a video on YouTube. There's so many GPS nightmares in that line, but just kind of avoid those ones. I think I can't think of any others really offhand. I think Orkanok's another one. Not Orkanok. Torka is another one. I'm trying to think of any others that could really give you some trouble that are in Beast Wars. I think that's it outside of Japanese stuff, but we're going to kind of stick to mainline retail Western market because that's the more cheaper stuff for you to get in the secondary market. A thing that I also suggest is like if you go on eBay, a good way to get like good amount of Beast Wars toys for your bang for your buck is, and this is a little finance trick here, instead of buying them individually, because Beast Wars toys, amazingly, because they were 90s products, they were kind of printed into oblivion, and it really was a peak popularity for Transformers at the time, so there was tons of it in the secondary market, that instead of buying individual figures that might cost you between $20 and $30 complete, there's tons of people that just post listings of lots. And when I mean lots, I mean LOTS, lots. So if you just type like Beast Wars lot, LOT, you're going to see a whole bunch of guys selling like 30 figures at once. And yeah, it might run you up to like $150, but you'll get probably $400 to $500 worth of value of wave 1, 2, and 3, and possibly even wave 4 stuff of figures. There's just so much out there. So it's also a cheaper line to collect, and I'm pretty sure as time progresses, it will increase in value as that market that grew up with it starts to go out there and hunt for it. Again, not to mention people like Grayskull here that are finally discovering it really for the first time and will be adding to that buying power in that market. But that's one thing too. If you're looking to just get like a nice smather of stuff, just check that way. You'll find a whole bunch of cool things. But that being said, cool figures. Man, there's so many. There is so many great figures. Like, I mean, my go-to always, I say, like, before you jump into the Transmetal stuff, which is more familiar for G1 collectors and adds that whole robotic element, you know, where you go from stuff that looks hardcore like Beast to stuff that lean more towards what Ravage and Grimlock kind of looked like, which was a metallic, you know, kind of mechanical Beast. But those first three waves, Series 1, 2, and 3, man, there was just some really good stuff. I always, again, we're not talking show characters, because those are kind of the go-to for everybody, but there's just some really fun non-show characters. I really like Razor Beast of the Flip Changers. So if you want to get your taste of how Flip Changers were during Beast Wars, Razor Beast is a really good one. Iguanus, and also Beast Wars Megatron, the Crocodile, and the Bat Optimus Primal. You get a good real taste of how those were handled. Of the non-show characters in the deluxes, I really like Wolfang. Like, that was like a character that he was supposed to be in the show. He ended up not being in the show, but I would have loved him to be in the show. He was really cool, Wolfang, and his repaint / remold of K9. That pair, man, that's like my top of the list of I would have loved them in the show, along with kind of Polar Claw. I don't know why. And Polar Claw going into the Voyagers, again, another really good one. Just a non-show character that just had such a great toy. And just to go into like even some of the really cheapy stuff, Beast Wars really was the coming out party, and we could go into like that history video that I did I think like a week ago or so. But Beast Wars really was the coming out party for Transformers really getting mainstream McDonald's toys. And man, some of those Beast Wars McDonald's toys are pretty fun. I'll be honest with you. Beetle, Manta Ray, Panther, those are some pretty fun toys. You know, like those toys we now pay like probably $7.99 in retail, and they call it a Legion class or a Scout. But back then they were free with your Happy Meal. So really good stuff, those ones too, if you could get those. And those are like super cheap, probably still kicking around. Millions of those have been made. So and other really good ones. Razor Claw, the Crab. Wow, what a really good little mold. Very fun from, I think that was Series 3. Nice little fun little mold. What was another one that was really good? A lot of the, you know, Clawjaws, you know, the squid. Cyber Shark was amazing. That was like a really fun one too that really should have been in the show in my opinion. I suggest the Grimlock, but fragile. You know, I'm going to say one that people always rag on too. Like, I love Retrax. Retrax is probably, a lot of people vote him probably the worst Beast Wars toy. Not in terms of like fragility or stuff like that, but just in terms of engineering and how it was very limited in articulation at a time when articulation was at its peak because of ball joints. But he has character. He really was. He was a little fun little guy. So give Retrax a try. Maybe you'll see what I see. But there's so many others. Like Baboom was another really good one too. The Mandrill. And then when you jump into that like Transmetal and Fusor era, then you get really into the interesting mix of Beast Wars, and when it really was in terms of like, it was really starting to peak in popularity, and there was just so much going on, and there's so many wacky designs. There is so many crazy wacky designs of the Fusors that are non-show characters. Let me tell you about Bantor, man. Bantor like is like a sleeper hit. I love that mold so much. What a cool little tiger / mandrill combination. Really cool one. Terragator was another really cool one. Airhammer. Like, people sleep on those basic Fusors, and they just don't recognize just how fun some of those designs were. They were really, really, really cool. And when you get even into the deluxe ones, you know, outside of, everyone talks about Silverbolt, but Sky Shadow, really cool one. Injector, ugly as hell, but still a really cool design. I love them. They were great. The Transmetals, most of them fall into just show characters, unfortunately, or was going to be show characters. What I mean by that is, like, you know, there's a Transmetal Rhinox toy there. He wasn't a Transmetal in the show. Same thing with Pterosaur, wasn't a Transmetal in the show. And even like in the Mega scale, which is what we call Voyagers today, there was a character called Scavenger, but it's clearly just Inferno. And we talked about Scavenger and Inferno's history a couple of weeks ago. So, you know, it's really just Transmetal Scavenger. And those are all great. They're all great. I mean, you can't go wrong with any of the Transmetals. They're chromy. They're beautiful. It really just, who's your favorite character? And I'm pretty sure the show will kind of dictate where you go from there. When we go into like the tail end of Beast Wars with the Transmetal 2s and stuff, there is a lot of cool designs again. People always rag on the shelf warmer of Optimus Minor, but Optimus Minor has insane articulation on a Spider-Man ball-jointed figure level that you could put him in a million crazy poses. I've seen poses where he's sitting with his legs crossed and he's doing like, Hindu poses, and he's doing all kinds of yoga poses. Like, he is a super articulated, fun little figure that doesn't get enough love and goes for absolutely nothing in the secondary market today because there was millions of them out there mint on card. Night Glider. Oh my God. What a great figure. What a great figure. Sword sheath on his tail. Kind of has that, he's a flying squirrel, Transmetal 2 with a blue head, gives that very Optimus Primal kind of vibe to it. Really cool. I almost feel like that figure was designed as kind of like a sequel to the Bat Optimus Primal in a lot of ways. Just a really cool design. I really like that one a lot. And of course, of some of the other non-show character Transmetal 2s, like I think Prowl, the owl, what a unique design. Even had a running change where you could get a choice if you want a black owl or a white one. So you kind of have that, like, it's Prowl or is it, blue streak? Like, oh, you get like choices, I guess. Iguanus, really cool. I love that his chest opened up with his Energon orb or crystal. Gave it a very pre-Matrix kind of gimmick before there was removable or matrices in the chests and stuff like that. So I really dug that about Iguanus's Transmetal 2. And of course the Cyber Shark Transmetal 2, another great one. So many good ones. And then when we get to the tail end, like literally the end of the line before it stopped, we had the Beast Wars Mutant stuff. Now, the problem with the Beast Wars Mutant stuff is they're very pricey today because they were the tail end of Beast Wars. They came out during 2000 into Beast Machines. A lot of tail end stuff, and I've said this multiple times on the podcast, last wave stuff is always more difficult to get because either retailers don't pick it up at all because it's the end of the line, they're already moving on to the next thing. They have too much of the previous wave, so they don't order it at all because they still want to get rid of the old stuff, and then by the time the new wave starts, they just skip over that last wave. Or sometimes just people's interest wanes and they just, they get excited about a product in wave 1 and 2, and then they get bored of it and they don't pick up, final wave 3, wave 4, wave whatever. So that final wave, which had Poison Bite, Razor Claw, Icebird, and Soundwave, the crocodile, not the tape cassette, but crocodile/bat mutant tape cassette, those all go for pretty decent coin today. I know I think a complete Soundwave went for like $75 not too long ago. So not even on the card. So for a deluxe scale thing to go for like $75 and it came out like in the turn of the century, that's pretty impressive. But that's again primarily because number one, it's a non-show character that came out after the year 2000. That's not a well-known name character, although it is called Soundwave, but it isn't really Soundwave. And yet it goes for that kind of coin. It's because of how limited they are. There's just not a lot of them to go around. And I'll be honest with you, they're not the greatest toys either. They have some, they have interesting cues to them. But at the end of the day, they're not very interesting. And then, when you learn their history, they were actually supposed to be Animorph toys that were then turned into Beast Wars toys. That kind of even gives a better perspective on what's going on there. But yeah, that's just some of them. I mean, there's so many. I could go on. If you're asking me to talk about Beast Wars, I could go on and on about some of the great stuff that Beast Wars has. But that's just some of them. And again, when you watch the show, it's going to influence which show characters you're going to also want to pick up too. And that's why I kind of skipped over show characters and repaints of show characters, like let's say, like Buzzsaw or Laserbeak, which are repaints of show character molds. But just the non-show character molds, like there's just so many good ones. Like you're gonna have such a greater appreciation for the engineering and tooling that went on 25 years ago, that when you look at what's going on today, you're just gonna go, wow, this is some good stuff. And Beast Wars brought back like the rub sign thing for a little bit with the Energon chip. So I think it was 97 onward, they had the Energon chip that was inside some of the figures, so you could rub to see the faction. And then they had the Energon Crystal Cube and all that cool stuff, all kinds of little gimmicks that kept it fresh and interesting year after year. And it's amazing because back then it was like, hey, 1997 Transformers. How many figures? Less than 20. I think actually no, I think it was like about 20. I think like hold on, I'm just gonna look at my shelving here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, if you count, I guess the Microverse stuff, which I forgot to mention too. There was 2 Microverse playsets, but those are very. If you like Mighty Max and Polly Pocket kind of stuff, you'll dig that. But yeah, like 1997, I'm looking at my display here, 21 figures, 22 or 23 if you count the Microverse stuff. So, 21 products for an entire year, as opposed to today that like, oof, man, we got like what 70 products a year now minimum. So it's a crazy world. It's a crazy world, but going back to the Beast Wars era, it's not a huge line. It is a little daunting when you start looking at, like, let's say the Japanese stuff and some of the European variants, but really don't look too much into that stuff because it's a lot of the same molds that you could get already in basic retail. So it doesn't really make a difference. The basic retail stuff, there's plenty of them out there. There's no point in spending like crazy money on, again, like Randy, the GPS figure, when there's millions of Razor Beasts out there. There's no point in getting, what's another one? Hydra, which was the Japanese release of Beast Wars 1997 Laserbeak with a slight purple change. When you could, Hydra's going to run you maybe $40 plus shipping, as opposed to a Laserbeak Wave 3 1997 Beast Wars, which there's millions of them out there. So anyways, hope that answers your question. There's so much good stuff. I want people that are also listening, let me know who you feel is your favorite, like, let's say Western release Beast Wars figures and why, because that'll really help steer other people who might be interested in getting into collecting this section of the Transformers hobby. And there's just so many good figures. There's so many. I've skipped over tons. I guarantee it. I'm looking over and I'm like, oh man, like, how did I not talk about like Power Pinch, the earwig, like how did I not talk about Snarl, the Tasmanian Devil? Like there's just so many, or Drillbit. Oh man, I keep turning my head and looking at my display and going like, there's just so many good ones. There's so many good ones that cannot be ignored just from the Western releases alone. But yeah, once again, thanks again, Gray Skull. Great listener question. And if you want to be part of the Transformer Slag podcast and ask a listener question to be read on the podcast, like Gray Skull, patreon.com/Protoman, and enjoy yourself. Come join us. Have a good time. And I hope you all have a great day.